The massive space station Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars like a shining city. Its metal walls stretched for miles in every direction. Bright lights marked countless windows where over 200,000 beings lived and worked. Ships of all sizes came and went from the docking bays, carrying traders and diplomats from across the galaxy. Inside the station, the main marketplace buzzed with activity. Strange creatures filled the walkways and shops. Blue-skinned aliens, with 4 arms, haggled over rare metals. Tall beings made of living crystal examined precious gems with eyes that glowed like stars. Cloud-like entities drifted through the air, speaking in musical tones that sounded like wind chimes. Among all these alien forms, 3 humans walked together through the crowded streets. They looked small compared to many of the other species around them. Captain Jake Morrison led the group, his brown hair neat and his blue uniform crisp. He carried himself with quiet confidence as his eyes took in everything around them. Behind him walked Lisa Parker, his security chief. Her red hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her sharp green eyes constantly scanned for any signs of danger. She kept one hand near the weapon at her side, though she hoped she would not need to use it. The third member of their team was Dr. Tom Bradley, a tall man with graying hair and thick glasses. He carried a tablet computer and kept stopping to take notes about the different alien species they passed. His face showed wonder and excitement at seeing so many new forms of life. The 3 humans had traveled far from Earth to reach this place. They carried with them the hopes of their entire planet. For the first time in human history, Earth had been invited to join the Galactic Trade Consortium. This meeting could change everything for humanity. Jake looked around at the incredible sight. Shops sold foods that glowed in the dark. Others offered technology that seemed like magic to human eyes. The air filled with dozens of different languages, creating a constant background noise like the sound of ocean waves. Hard to believe. "We are really here," Lisa said quietly, moving closer to Jake as a group of insect-like aliens clicked past them on 6 legs each. "Earth will never be the same after this," Tom added, his voice full of amazement. He pointed at a creature that looked like a walking tree with silver bark. "The scientific discoveries we could make just from studying the plant life from their worlds." Jake nodded but kept his attention on their mission. They had 3 days to prove that humans deserved a place in the galactic community. The trade consortium included thousands of worlds and species. Earth would gain access to incredible technology and knowledge, but first, they had to show they could be trusted partners. They made their way toward the diplomatic quarter where their meetings would take place. The crowds grew thicker as they walked. Jake noticed that most species seemed to stick with their own kind. The crystal beings gathered in one area, their bodies making soft ringing sounds when they touched. The cloud creatures floated together in a group near the ceiling. As they walked, none of them noticed the darkness that had already begun to spread in the lower levels of the station. Deep in the maintenance tunnels, something moved through shadows that seemed darker than they should be. It left no footprints, made no sound, but death followed in its wake. Station workers in the deep levels had started to disappear. Security found their posts empty, with no sign of struggle or explanation. The few security cameras in those areas showed only brief shadows and darkness that moved in ways darkness should not move. Commander Vex, the station leader, studied the reports in his office high above the marketplace. His people were tall and thin, with skin that changed colors based on their emotions. Right now, his skin showed worried patterns of deep purple and orange. 5 missing in the past 6 hours, his security chief reported. All from the lower maintenance levels. No witnesses, no evidence of what happened to them. Commander Vex drummed his long fingers on his desk. "Increase patrols in those areas. I want teams of 4, never alone. And keep this quiet. We have trade delegations from 50 worlds here this week. Panic would be a disaster." But even as he gave these orders, Commander Vex felt something cold in his stomach. In all his years running Nexus Prime, he had never seen anything like this. The missing workers seemed to have simply vanished, as if something had reached out of the darkness and taken them. Meanwhile, Jake and his team reached the diplomatic quarter without knowing about the danger growing below them. The buildings here were taller and more elegant, designed to impress visitors from across the galaxy. Gardens filled with alien plants provided beautiful spaces between the offices and meeting halls. The Consortium Council will meet with us tomorrow morning, Jake told his team as they walked toward their assigned quarters. Tonight we should rest and prepare. This could be the most important meeting in human history. Lisa looked around, at the other diplomats moving through the area. We are not the only new species seeking membership. I count at least 3 other groups I do not recognize. Tom had stopped to examine a plant with leaves that seemed to be made of metal. The competition for membership must be fierce. What makes the council think humanity has something special to offer? Jake considered the question as they entered their building. We may not be the strongest or the most advanced species, but humans have something unique. We do not give up easily. We find ways to solve problems that others cannot. As night fell on Nexus Prime, the 3 humans settled into their rooms to prepare for the next day. They reviewed their presentation materials and practiced their speeches. They had no idea that something ancient and deadly was already hunting in the darkness below them. The Void Hunter had awakened from its long sleep. Released by terrorists who wanted to destroy the peace between worlds, it now moved freely through the station. It fed on fear and grew stronger with each life it took. Soon, it would be ready to hunt in the crowded areas above. The thing in the darkness had never encountered humans before. It had no idea what it would find when it finally met these strange new creatures from a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy. The morning alarms on Nexus Prime woke everyone at the same time as always, but today felt different. News of the missing workers had started to spread, carried in whispers through the crowded marketplaces and dining halls. By the time Jake Morrison and his team sat down for breakfast, the entire station buzzed with nervous energy. 15 people missing now, Lisa Parker said quietly as she read the security reports on her tablet. All from the lower levels. No bodies found, no signs of struggle, they just vanished. Dr. Tom Bradley looked up from his alien fruit breakfast, his face worried. That does not sound like any normal security problem. Equipment failure maybe, or some kind of accident. Jake shook his head as he studied the station maps. Commander, Vex increased security patrols everywhere. If this was just an accident, they would have found something by now. Around them in the dining hall, other species showed their own signs of worry. The crystal beings made soft ringing sounds that grew higher and more sharp when they were upset. The insect creatures clicked their mandibles together in rapid patterns. Even the tall plant-like beings seemed to droop more than usual. As they finished eating, an announcement echoed through the station speakers. Commander Vex's voice carried a tone of forced calm that fooled no one. Citizens and visitors of Nexus Prime, we are currently investigating some technical difficulties in the lower maintenance areas. As a safety measure, all personnel are restricted, from levels 20 through 30 until further notice. Security patrols will be increased throughout the station. Please report any unusual activity to station security immediately. The word sent a wave of unease through the dining hall. Jake watched as different species reacted in their own ways. The cloud creatures began to drift toward the upper levels of the station. Groups of the 4-armed blue beings gathered together, speaking in their rapid language with obvious concern. They are scared, Lisa observed. All of them. Whatever is happening down there, it has the whole station on edge. Jake stood up from the table. We should check in with our diplomatic contacts. If this situation gets worse, it could affect our negotiations with the trade consortium. But even as they made their way through the station corridors, things were getting much worse in the lower levels. The creature that had been hunting in the shadows was growing stronger with each passing hour. Every death, every moment of fear, from the missing workers, fed its power and made it larger. The Void Hunter no longer needed to hide in the deepest tunnels. It had grown bold enough to move through the maintenance corridors where shift workers still had to go. Its form remained difficult to see clearly, like looking at smoke that moved with purpose and intelligence. Security Chief Drath, Commander Vex's top officer, led a team of 6 guards into level 22. They carried the most powerful weapons. The station had energy rifles that could cut through solid metal. But as they moved through the dark corridors, their own fear made the weapons feel useless in their hands. Readings show something large moving ahead of us, one guard whispered into his communicator His four eyes darted back and forth as he scanned the shadows. "Stay together," Drath commanded, but his own voice shook slightly. "Whatever this thing is, we face it as a team." They never got the chance. The Void Hunter struck from above, dropping from an air vent like liquid darkness. The guards' weapons fired wildly, but fear made their aim poor. The energy beams passed harmlessly through empty air as the creature moved between them like flowing shadow. One by one, the guards vanished into the darkness. Their screams echoed through the corridors for only a moment before cutting off completely. Chief Drath managed to send one last message before he too disappeared. "Command, this is Security Team 7. We are under attack by something. I repeat, we are under attack. The thing is not. It is not like anything we have seen before." The message ended in static. Commander Vex received the report in his office as his skin turned the deep black color that showed extreme fear in his species. Behind him, his advisors made worried sounds in their various languages. "Sir, we must evacuate the civilian areas," his aide suggested. "If this creature is moving up from the lower levels." "No," Commander Vex said firmly, though his voice shook. "We have diplomatic missions from 50 worlds here. If we panic them, it will destroy everything we have built. Nexus Prime is supposed to be safe, if we cannot protect our guests." He did not finish the sentence. Everyone in the room knew what failure would mean. The trade consortium would lose faith in the station. Trade routes would move elsewhere. Thousands of jobs would disappear, and the careful peace between species could collapse. But the Void Hunter did not care about politics or trade agreements. It had tasted the fear of intelligent beings, and now it wanted more. The creature began to move upward through the station levels, drawn by the terror that was starting to spread among the population. In the marketplace, vendors noticed that fewer customers were shopping. Groups of beings gathered together instead of spreading out through the shops. Parents kept their children closer. The normal cheerful noise of trade and conversation had dropped to nervous whispers. Jake and his team felt the change as they walked through the diplomatic quarter. Other delegations moved in tighter groups with more security guards around them. The casual friendliness of the day before had been replaced by suspicious glances and quick conversations. "Something big is happening," Lisa said as she watched a group of crystal beings hurry past them toward their ship docking bay. "Those are not the actions of people worried about technical difficulties." Tom pointed toward the main plaza area. "Look at the security posts. They have doubled the guards at every entrance." As if his words were a signal, the lights in the corridor flickered. For just a moment, the shadows seemed to move wrong, stretching longer than they should. A cold feeling passed through the air that made all three humans shiver. "Did you feel that?" Tom asked quietly. Before anyone could answer, screams echoed from somewhere deep in the station. Not the screams of accident or injury, but pure terror. The sound carried through the air systems and corridors, reaching every level of Nexus Prime. The hunt had begun in earnest. The Void Hunter was no longer content to take isolated victims in empty corridors. It wanted to feed on the fear of crowds, to grow strong on the terror of thousands. And somewhere in the growing darkness, alien eyes that had never seen anything like humans were about to discover that not every species responded to fear in the same way. The emergency sirens began wailing throughout Nexus Prime at exactly noon station time. The sound echoed through every corridor and room, a deep howling noise that made everyone's blood run cold. Red warning lights flashed in rhythm with the alarms, casting strange shadows that seemed to dance on the walls. Commander Vex's voice came over the communication system, but this time he could not hide his terror. His words shook as he spoke to the entire station. "All citizens and visitors, this is Commander Vex. We are now under full emergency lockdown. Something dangerous is loose on the station. Stay in groups of 5 or more. Do not go anywhere alone. Security teams are working to contain the threat. Remain calm and follow all instructions from station personnel." But calm was the last thing anyone felt. In the main plaza, thousands of beings gathered together for safety. The massive central area of Nexus Prime stretched up through dozens of levels, with walkways and platforms connected by bridges and elevators. Usually it buzzed with happy activity. Now it filled with frightened crowds. Jake Morrison stood with his team on one of the middle-level platforms watching the chaos below. Groups of different species clustered together like islands in a sea of fear. The crystal beings had formed a tight circle, their bodies glowing brighter as they tried to protect each other. The insect creatures built defensive walls using tables and chairs from nearby shops. "This is not a technical problem," Lisa Parker said as she watched security teams run past them with heavy weapons. "Whatever killed those people is still out there, and it is getting stronger." Dr. Tom Bradley adjusted his glasses and studied the crowd below. "Look at how they are reacting. Every species is showing the same behavior pattern. Group formation, defensive positioning, elevated stress levels. Classic prey response to an apex predator." "Prey response?" Jake asked, though his eyes never stopped scanning the area around them. When animals face a predator they cannot fight, they cluster together for protection. The weak hide in the center, while the strong form the outside barrier. It is instinct. Tom pointed at the various groups. "In the plaza. Every species here evolved on different worlds, but they are all doing the same thing." As if to prove his point, a new wave of terror swept through the crowd. People pointed upward and screamed. On the highest level of the plaza, something moved in the shadows near the ceiling. It was hard to see clearly, like smoke that had learned to think and hunt. The Void Hunter had finally emerged from the lower levels. After feeding on the fear of dozens of victims, it had grown large enough to hunt in the open. Its form shifted and flowed, sometimes looking like a giant predator, other times like living darkness with too many eyes. The creature moved along the ceiling with fluid grace, looking down at the terrified masses below. It had never seen so many potential victims in one place. The fear rising from the crowd was like a feast that made it grow stronger with every passing second. Security teams on the upper platforms opened fire with their energy weapons. Bright beams of light cut through the air, but they passed right through the hunter as if it were made of smoke. The creature seemed to absorb the energy, growing even larger and more solid. "The weapons are not working," Lisa observed, her hand moving instinctively to her own sidearm. "Whatever that thing is, it is not affected by normal energy fire." The hunter began to descend from the ceiling, flowing down the walls like liquid shadow. As it moved closer to the crowd, the fear grew stronger. Beings who had lived for centuries began to sob like children. Warriors from a dozen different worlds shook with terror they had never felt before. "It feeds on fear," Tom said suddenly, his scientific mind working even in the face of horror. "That is why it has gotten stronger. Every person who becomes afraid makes it more powerful." Jake watched as the creature reached the main floor of the plaza. It moved through the crowd like a shark through water, and wherever it went, beings collapsed in pure terror. Some fainted from fear, others simply curled up on the ground and stopped moving. The hunter seemed to enjoy the terror it caused. It would approach a group of beings, let them see its full, horrible form, and then feed on their fear before moving to the next group. It was not just hunting for food, it was playing with its prey. "We need to help with the evacuation," Jake said, starting to move toward the stairs that led down to the main floor. "Are you crazy?" Lisa grabbed his arm. "That thing just tore through a full security squad. What can we do that they could not?" Jake looked at her seriously. "We can try. People are dying down there." As they argued, the Void Hunter continued. "It's deadly game." It had reached a group of the tall plant-like beings who stood frozen in terror. Their silver bark had turned black with fear, and their leaf-like appendages shook like branches in a storm. But then something unexpected happened. As the hunter moved between the different groups, it passed near the platform where the three humans stood. For the first time since entering the plaza, the creature stopped moving. The hunter's multiple sensory organs all turned toward Jake and his team. It had been drawn by something unusual, something it had never encountered before. In a sea of pure terror, it had found three beings whose bioelectric signatures were completely different. The creature studied them with alien intelligence. These small beings showed concern, yes, and awareness of danger. But where every other species radiated the primal fear that fed the hunter, These three showed something else entirely. They showed the steady, analytical thinking of creatures who had evolved not as prey, but as hunters themselves. The Void Hunter tilted what might have been its head, confused by this new discovery. In thousands of years of feeding on fear across dozens of worlds, it had never encountered beings who faced an apex predator with anything other than terror. For the first time in its existence, the hunter felt something it had never experienced before: uncertainty. Below in the plaza, the crowd began to notice that the creature had stopped its attack. Thousands of eyes turned upward to see what had captured the monster's attention. They saw three small beings standing calmly on the platform, looking back at the creature that had terrorized an entire space station. The confrontation that would change everything was about to begin. The plaza fell completely silent. Thousands of beings held their breath as the Void Hunter focused all its attention on the three humans standing on the platform above. The creature's form rippled and shifted as it tried to understand what it was seeing. Jake Morrison stepped forward to the edge of the platform railing. Below him, the massive predator waited like a living shadow made of nightmares. Every instinct that billions of years of evolution had given to intelligent species screamed at the watching crowd to run, to hide, to do anything except stand and face this monster. But Jake did not run. He looked down at the creature with the same calm attention he might give to studying a tactical problem. His brain worked through possibilities and options, while his heart beat steady and strong. "Incredible," Dr. Tom Bradley whispered as he watched the standoff. "Look at its body language. The creature is confused. It expected us to react like the others." Lisa Parker kept her hand near her weapon, but she also stood her ground. Her training as a security officer had taught her to stay calm under pressure. "What do you think it wants?" "It wants us to be afraid," Jake said quietly, never taking his eyes off the hunter. "But fear is just one possible response to danger. Humans learned other ways to handle predators." The Void Hunter began to move upward, flowing along the walls toward their platform. As it climbed, its form grew larger and more solid. The terror, feeding from the crowd below, had made it incredibly powerful. When it reached their level, it towered over the three humans like a living mountain of darkness. The creature leaned forward until its multiple sensory organs were only inches from Jake's face. This close, he could see that it had dozens of eyes scattered across its shifting surface. Each eye glowed with an alien intelligence that had seen the destruction of countless worlds. The hunter tried to project waves of pure terror directly into Jake's mind. This psychic attack had never failed to break the will of any living being. Species across the galaxy had collapsed in gibbering madness when faced with the raw fear that the creature could create. But Jake's mind worked differently than the hunter expected. Where other beings had instinctual panic responses to apex predators, humans had developed something unique. They could think clearly, even when facing death. Jake felt the fear trying to enter his thoughts, but his trained mind pushed it aside. He had grown up on Earth, a world where early humans had learned to hunt creatures far larger and more dangerous than themselves. His species had climbed to the top of the food chain not through natural weapons or superior strength, but through intelligence and the refusal to give up. "You are not what I expected," Jake said calmly to the creature. His voice carried clearly through the silent plaza. "You rely on fear to make your prey helpless. But humans learned long ago that fear is just information. It tells us danger is present, but it does not control our actions." The hunter recoiled slightly, confused by this response. In thousands of years of existence, no prey had ever spoken to it like this. Most beings could not even form coherent thoughts when faced with its presence. Down in the plaza, Dr. Bradley began explaining to the terrified aliens around him what they were witnessing. His calm scientific voice helped some of them overcome their panic enough to listen. "Humans evolved on a world full of apex predators," he said to a group of crystal beings who were shaking with fear. "Large cats, massive bears, wolves that hunted in packs. Our ancestors survived by learning to think under pressure. When they met a predator, they did not just run. They studied it, learned its weaknesses, and found ways to turn the hunt around." The crystal beings listened with growing amazement. One of them managed to speak through its fear. "Your species hunted apex predators?" "We became the apex predators," Tom replied simply. "Not because we were stronger or faster, but because we never stopped thinking. We never accepted that any fight was impossible to win." Back on the platform, the Void Hunter was becoming increasingly frustrated. It tried different approaches to break Jake's will. It showed him visions of death and destruction. It projected the screams of its countless victims. It displayed its most terrifying forms, shapes that had driven entire species to madness. Jake watched it all with the same analytical attention. He noted how the creature moved, how it changed shape, how it responded to different stimuli. Like a scientist studying a new species, he was learning everything he could about his opponent. "You have been successful because your prey always reacted the same way," Jake observed. "They saw you as an unstoppable force of nature. But you are not. You are just another predator, and every predator has weaknesses." The hunter let out a sound that might have been frustration or rage. The noise echoed through the plaza like the roar of a dying star. Several alien beings collapsed from the sheer psychic pressure of that sound. But Jake stood firm. Lisa and Tom remained at his sides, their own calm helping to reinforce his resolve. The three humans presented a united front that the creature had never encountered before. Throughout the plaza, other humans who worked on the station began to emerge from the crowds. They had been scattered among the various alien groups, but now they moved toward the center. Like Jake's team, they showed concern but not panic. They began helping to organize evacuation efforts and assist the more terrified aliens. The watching crowd started to notice something remarkable. While every other species cowered in terror, the humans moved with purpose and clear thinking. They treated the crisis like a problem to be solved rather than a disaster to be endured. "Look at them," whispered an insect-like being to its companion. "They are not afraid." "How is that possible?" its friend replied. "That creature could destroy us all." The answer was becoming clear to everyone in the plaza. Humans were different. They had not evolved to be the strongest or the most advanced species in the galaxy, but they had evolved to be the ones who never gave up, never stopped thinking, and never accepted defeat as final. The confrontation between human determination and alien terror was about to reach its climax. The standoff between Jake Morrison and the Void Hunter had lasted for several minutes, but it felt like hours to everyone watching. The creature continued to try different methods to break the human's will, but nothing worked. Each failed attempt seemed to make the hunter more desperate and confused. Around the plaza, other humans began to take action. Lisa Parker had contacted the scattered human workers throughout the station using her communicator. One by one, they emerged from their hiding places and began to coordinate their efforts. "All human personnel, this is Security Chief Parker." She spoke into her device. "We have a situation in the main plaza. The creature attacking the station appears to be vulnerable to coordinated resistance. Begin organizing evacuation procedures using standard Earth protocols." The response was immediate. Humans throughout Nexus Prime began to move with the same calm efficiency that Jake had shown. They did not run in panic like the other species. Instead, they treated the crisis like any other emergency that required clear thinking and teamwork. In the medical bay, Dr. Sarah Chen, a human doctor working with the station's medical staff, began organizing triage areas for the aliens who had collapsed from fear. She worked alongside alien doctors who were amazed by her steady hands and clear thinking under pressure. "How can you work so calmly?" asked a floating jellyfish-like doctor whose tentacles shook with terror. "That monster could kill us all." "Panic helps no one," Sarah replied as she checked the vital signs of a crystal being who had fainted. "If we are going to die, we might as well spend our last moments helping others. If we are going to live, then our patients need us to stay focused." In the security center, human technician Mike Rogers worked with alien engineers to study the hunter's movement patterns. While his alien colleagues struggled to think clearly through their fear, Mike analyzed the data with scientific precision. "The creature's energy readings spike whenever fear levels increase in its immediate area," he reported to Commander Vex. But look at this. When it encountered the humans in the plaza, its power levels actually dropped. Commander Vex stared at the readings with growing hope. His skin had turned a brighter shade of purple, showing the first optimism he had felt in hours. Are you saying the humans somehow weaken it? Not weaken exactly, Mike explained. But they do not feed it either. Every other species generates psychic energy when they feel terror. Humans generate something different. Back in the plaza, Dr. Tom Bradley had become an unofficial coordinator for the alien evacuation efforts. His calm explanations and logical approach helped many aliens overcome their panic enough to move to safer areas. The creature hunts by detecting fear, he explained to a group of 4 armed blue beings. Stay in groups, move steadily toward the exits, and try to focus on the task of getting to safety rather than the danger behind you. The blue beings looked at him with amazement. You speak as if this is a normal problem with a normal solution? Every problem has a solution, Tom replied. The key is to keep thinking until you find it. Meanwhile, Jake continued his psychological battle with the Void Hunter. The creature had grown increasingly agitated as it realized that its primary weapon was useless against this strange prey. It began to change tactics, trying to use physical intimidation instead of fear. The hunter expanded its form until it filled most of the platform. Its multiple eyes glowed brighter as it leaned down over Jake like a mountain of living shadow. When psychic terror had failed, it hoped that the simple threat of physical destruction might work. But Jake did not step back. He looked up at the massive creature and spoke in the same calm voice he had used throughout the encounter. You have made a mistake, he said clearly. You thought humans were like every other species you have hunted. You thought we would be helpless once you took away our weapons and filled us with fear. But you do not understand what humans really are. The hunter paused, its alien intelligence trying to process these words. Jake continued, his voice growing, stronger. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest or the most advanced. But we are the species that learned to hunt creatures like you. On our world, we did not run from apex predators. We studied them, learned their patterns, and found ways to bring them down. Around the plaza, the organized human response was having an effect on the other species. Seeing humans work calmly and efficiently in the face of terror gave the aliens hope. Some began to overcome their own panic enough to help with evacuation efforts. The crystal beings stopped their terrified ringing and began to move toward the exits in organized groups. The insect creatures abandoned their defensive positions and started helping injured aliens reach medical care. Even the cloud beings descended from the ceiling to assist with the evacuation. Look, one of the 4-armed aliens said to its companion. If these small humans can face the monster, perhaps we can find courage too. The change in the crowd's mood was having a direct effect on the Void Hunter. As fear levels dropped throughout the plaza, the creature began to shrink. Its form became less solid, less imposing. For the first time since awakening, it was losing power instead of gaining it. Jake noticed the change immediately. You are getting weaker, he observed. Your power comes from our fear, but humans have something you have never encountered before. We have the ability to inspire courage in others. The hunter let out another roar, but this one sounded more like pain than rage. It was experiencing something completely new to its existence. Instead of growing stronger as the hunt progressed, it was becoming weaker. Its prey was turning the other creatures against it, simply by showing them that resistance was possible. Lisa Parker had finished coordinating the human response teams throughout the station. She returned to Jake's side along with Tom Bradley. The 3 humans stood together, united in their determination to protect the aliens who had welcomed them to this place. The evacuation is proceeding smoothly, Lisa reported. Human teams are coordinating with station security to establish safe zones throughout Nexus Prime. Medical teams are treating the injured, Tom added. Dr. Bradley has organized a research group to study the creature's weaknesses. Jake nodded, never taking his eyes off the hunter. Then it is time to finish this. The Void Hunter seemed to understand that something fundamental had changed. Its prey had become predators. The fear that had fed it was being replaced by something it had never faced before: organized, intelligent resistance led by beings who refused to accept defeat. For the first time in its long existence, the hunter realized it might have chosen the wrong prey to hunt. The moment of final confrontation arrived when Jake Morrison took a step forward toward the Void Hunter, instead of away from it. This single action, so contrary to every survival instinct the creature understood, shattered its predatory worldview completely. On Earth, we learned something important about apex predators, Jake said as he moved closer to the creature. They become apex predators because they never face organized resistance. But humans specialized in bringing down creatures that thought they were untouchable. The hunter recoiled for the first time, its massive form flowing backward across the platform. This was impossible. Prey did not advance on predators. Prey ran, hid, or froze in terror. They did not calmly walk toward certain death while explaining hunting theory. Around the plaza, the organized human response had transformed the entire situation. Lisa Parker's coordination with human personnel throughout the station had created an efficient evacuation network. Dr. Tom Bradley's research teams, working with alien scientists who had overcome their fear, had analyzed the creature's energy patterns and found crucial weaknesses. The creature exists partially in normal space and partially in what we might call fear space, Dr. Sarah Chen reported over the communication system. She had left the medical bay to join the research effort. It draws power from terror, but it also needs that terror to maintain its physical form in our reality. Commander Vex, monitoring the situation from his control center, watched in amazement as the humans turned a disaster into a coordinated response effort. "How are they doing this?" he asked Mike Rogers, the human technician working with his staff. "Training and instinct," Mike replied as he monitored the hunter's weakening energy readings. "Humans have been dealing with crisis situations for thousands of years. We learned that panic gets you killed, but clear thinking can save everyone." Back in the plaza, Jake continued his advance on the Void Hunter. The creature tried to project its most terrifying forms, shifting between nightmarish shapes that had broken the minds of countless beings across the galaxy. But Jake studied each transformation with the detached interest of a scientist examining specimens. "Impressive adaptations," he commented as the hunter displayed rows of crystalline teeth larger than swords. "But you are still thinking like a creature that relies on fear. You have never learned to fight opponents who fight back intelligently." The truth of his words became clear as human security teams, coordinated by Lisa Parker, began implementing containment protocols throughout the station. They had studied the creature's movement patterns and were systematically cutting off its escape routes. Unlike the alien security forces who had attacked in terror, the humans worked with calm precision. "Containment field generators are in position on all levels," Lisa reported through her communicator. "The creature will not be able to retreat to the lower tunnels." Dr. Bradley's research team had made another crucial discovery. The hunter's interdimensional nature makes it vulnerable to specific energy frequencies, Tom announced. "If we can generate a harmonized field using the station's power grid, we can force it to remain in normal space where it can be contained." The alien scientists who had joined the research effort looked at him with awe. "You found a solution in hours to a problem that has plagued worlds for centuries," one of the crystal beings said. "How is this possible?" "Humans do not give up," Tom replied simply. "When we face a problem we cannot solve with our current knowledge, we learn new things until we can solve it." The Void Hunter was beginning to understand that it faced something unprecedented. Not only were these humans unafraid, but they had somehow infected the other species with their courage. The carefully orchestrated fear that had fed the creature was being replaced by hope and determination. "You want to know what makes humans different?" Jake asked, as he stopped just out of the creature's reach. "We are the species that looked at every apex predator on our world and said, 'We can take that down.' Cave bears twice our size, saber-toothed cats with claws like knives, wolves that hunted in packs. We studied them all, learned their weaknesses, and turned ourselves into the ultimate predators." The hunter tried one last desperate attack, lunging forward with all its remaining strength. But Jake was ready. As the creature moved, human security teams throughout the plaza activated the containment field. Energy barriers sprang up around the hunter, trapping it in a cage of pure force. The creature slammed against the barriers with tremendous impact, but the fields held. Dr. Bradley's calculations had been perfect. The specific frequencies disrupted the hunter's ability to phase between dimensions, forcing it to remain in normal space where human technology could contain it. Containment successful, Lisa announced as she monitored the field generators. The creature is trapped and its power levels are dropping rapidly. Around the plaza, aliens who had been cowering in terror began to stand up and look at their human rescuers with new understanding. These small, seemingly fragile beings had accomplished something that entire worlds had failed to do. They had not just survived an encounter with a void hunter, they had captured it. Commander Vex arrived in the plaza with a full escort, his skin now showing the bright blue patterns of amazement and gratitude. "Captain Morrison," he said formally, "on behalf of Nexus Prime and the Galactic Trade Consortium, I offer our deepest thanks. How can we ever repay this debt?" Jake looked around at the mixed crowds of humans and aliens working together to restore order to the station. "No debt necessary, Commander? This is what allies do for each other." "Allies?" Commander Vex asked. "The Trade Consortium was considering whether to accept humanity as members," Jake replied with a slight smile. "I think we have demonstrated that humans bring something valuable to the galactic community. We may not be the most advanced species, but we are the ones you want standing next to you when everything goes wrong." The formal negotiations that had brought the human delegation to Nexus Prime were concluded within hours. The Trade Consortium not only accepted Earth as a full member, but offered humanity leadership positions in galactic security and crisis response organizations. More importantly, invitations began arriving from worlds across the galaxy. Other species wanted to learn from humans how to maintain courage and clear thinking in the face of the impossible. They wanted to understand how a species could look at any challenge and say, "We can handle this." As the Void Hunter was prepared for transport to a maximum security research facility, Jake stood with his team looking out at the stars through the plaza's massive windows. Somewhere out there, other threats waited in the darkness between worlds, but now the galaxy had something it had never possessed before. It had humans. Dr. Tom Bradley joined them at the window, still amazed by everything that had happened. "Do you think we will face other creatures like this one?" "Probably," Jake replied calmly. "The universe is a big place, and we have only begun to explore it. There will be other predators, other threats, other challenges that seem impossible to overcome." "And?" Lisa asked. Jake smiled as he watched human and alien work crews cooperating to repair the damage to the station. "And we will figure out how to handle them too. That is what humans do. We do not back down from the impossible. We make it possible." In the years that followed, that moment in the plaza would be remembered throughout the galaxy as the day humanity proved its place among the stars. Not as the strongest or smartest species, but as the one that never gives up, never stops thinking, and never lets fear make the decisions. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy was safer because humans had looked into the face of an apex predator and refused to blink.